Meg 2, The Trench is the sequel to the 2018 film that was actually pretty popular. I think more popular than I was anticipating at the time. It was kind of that era of like, can something like this be financially successful? And then it was like, oh, actually, yeah, you know, this book series, I guess, attracted a lot of people, or maybe just the premise of a big shark movie with Jason Statham. Either way, it was a big hit and we got a sequel 5 years later. And you might be thinking like, oh, was it delayed because of like COVID? Like they had it, you know, ready to shoot and then they had to stop. And it's like, not really as far as I know. Like they didn't really get a completed script until like 2021. They didn't start shooting until late 2021 or early 2022 too. So it's like, this is something that they didn't like rush out to make right away. They took a little bit to get it right, to make the script perfect, you know, to honor the book series by Steve Alton, which he previously said, this could be so popular, it could be the next Jurassic Park franchise. Well, and the story of this one, Jonas is back. Jason Statham as Jonas, famous character Jonas. He's kind of like he's an eco-warrior now, you know, he's busting some people that are dumping shit illegally. It's radiation, get it out of the ocean, you fuckers. He's doing that stuff. He's kind of like a secret agent James Bond of that. And he's also working with this organization that's, you know, exploring the trench and, you know, trying to study it. They even have a baby Meg that they were able to get off screen. They have it at the place to study it. They have it in a big old pool. So everything's going well. Everything's going great. But one mission down into the trench, and you know, there's some people down there that shouldn't be there. They get trapped. They got to get out, and also Megs are gonna get out, and stuff is happening. Stuff just happens, you know, in the ocean. It's really cool. I enjoyed the first Meg a lot when it first came out. Not really because I thought it was like, oh my gosh, this is the next best blockbuster, it's such a great movie. It was more so just like, I had a big old goofy time seeing it. I was already sold on the premise of like, it's Jason Statham fighting a big shark. The marketing has like Beyond the Sea playing in the trailer. Like, it seems like a goofy time. It's from director John Turteltaub, who did National Treasure movie, Sorcerer's Apprentice, so it's like, this seems like something that, you know, is kind of perfect for him. So I was really into it, and I was kind of vibing with the goofy nature of it. And every time I've rewatched it, I will still maintain that there's aspects of it that I find entertaining. I don't know if I can hold it in the same regard that I did back in 2018, just because after rewatching it so many times, I guess it's just finally clicked with me like, oh, it's not really funny bad. It's just, it's funny in certain ways. To me, it's hard to say that, like, to recommend that to anybody else. It's hard to say, like, oh, it's such a funny blast of a time, you know? There's just certain specific things that appeal to me. And also, this movie has a weird balance of, like, trying to take its premise and the stakes seriously and establishing these minor characters while also having these unintentionally kind of goofy blockbuster things, you know. I think I described it like it feels like a 90s or early 2000s movie that just got released in 2018. It has certain qualities that feel dated for a big blockbuster of these days, but that movie has. So it's kind of not soured, but just it's a different thing for me now. Like, I can watch it and I can appreciate aspects, but it's not one I'm rushing to rewatch all the time. I was really hoping for a big difference with this one. You've made your first movie, it made a lot of money. Maybe they're going to learn from some mistakes. They have the same exact writing team back, the same 3 people. The only difference is the director has changed. Instead of John Turteltaub, it's Ben Wheatley, which is very fascinating that they chose him. I have not seen all of his films. I have not seen Sightseers or Kill List, you know, a couple other movies that he's put out, but I have seen Free Fire, which I liked initially, and then rewatching I was like, there's not really a whole lot here for me. His remake of Rebecca, which I know it's another adaptation of the novel, but I always just, the Hitchcock movie is already kind of like a perfect movie in my eyes. It's a really fantastic film, and remaking Hitchcock in general usually doesn't go well, and that's exactly the case here. And also he did a movie called In the Earth, which I did talk about on this channel on like a combo review for a couple different horror movies, and that was one that I was kind of disappointed by. So it was a fascinating choice getting him, and, you know, judging by some of his other films that I haven't seen, you know, he's held up in some high regard. In fact, some people do like In the Earth, you know, some people did enjoy Free Fire, so, you know, maybe I'm just in the minority. Maybe I'll see the light when Ben Wheatley takes on Meg 2, The Trench. And I think there was some debate at the time, like, is it going to be R-rated because they got this guy? And it's not. But I think there was still that hope of like, well, just because of his own sensibilities and the horror genre before, you know, maybe he'll be able to up the ante with some of the action scenes. And I can definitely say, I think my favorite part about this movie is the third act. I think this definitely has a stronger third act than the first Meg. The first Meg has the shark, swimming up to the beach, and, all the people are there, but then he gets distracted by the two little submarines, and then Jason Statham fights it with that. And it's like, solid enough, but this one ups the ante of like, okay, you got a couple different Megs going around, you got this big old kraken swatting at things on the island, and these other Cretaceous period creatures running around, and you have the characters all splintered off doing their own things. It's like, okay, it's a little bit more exciting, and it's also a little more interesting than just Jason Statham is the one who's kind of got this, and every other character who's tagging along, they're trying desperately to give them stuff, and this one it's like, okay, they have action beats to do now. So, okay, and there's a couple points in the third act where it gets exactly what I wanted, which is just goofy, over the top, and funny, just like, oh, they're actually committed to doing that. That's hysterical. I guess the final kill, I consider it the final kill. It's, it's something else, and it defies logic. There's plenty of points in this movie where you're gonna just have to, check logic at the door, like, hey, wouldn't that make more sense? Or does this not make sense? You're just gonna have to check that out, because there's just so many moments like that. It's all worth it once you get to the final kill, and it's like, holy shit, I can't believe I just witnessed that, and they're totally committed to it. They're taking this so seriously. But that's the biggest issue with this movie. The third act, way better than the one in the first Meg, but overall, this movie I found disappointing, if I'm going to be honest. I went in with a little bit higher of expectations, even more so than the first Meg, and I kind of walked out yeah, there's just, I didn't get that charm or that, sense of fun that I got walking out of the screening for the first Meg. It was just kind of this one's a little bit more, just kind of dull, and a big problem is that they do, even though they have goofy one-liners, and they try to have, a sense of camaraderie with the new characters, and they're joking and saying stuff, there's not really a tongue-in-cheek quality to it. It doesn't really have a sense of fun. It's just very drab and kind of all right, well, we have to introduce these characters, and we have to quickly make the audience feel like they're good friends and they know each other, they're a great team. So let's just do these quick little things. And I didn't really feel any of it. I think the first Meg, it had the advantage of you as the audience member, you're entering this world, and, Jason Statham, it takes a while for them to reintroduce him after the opening, so you have a little bit more time, okay, this is this character, this is that character, this is what they do, here's a little quip from them, here's Rainn Wilson, he's the billionaire guy who's not all there with the team and is very selfish at certain points. And this movie, the way it opens, there's certain aspects about how they have now reintroduced us to the world and the characters where I'm like, why? You know what I mean? The actress who played the Jason Statham love interest in the last movie, she's not back. Her daughter is back, though. And minor spoilers, I guess. It's something that is revealed immediately in the movie, though. Not immediately, 5 minutes, but same thing. Fuck you. She dies off screen. They have killed her off screen. Not that that has to do with anything going on. There's no, sense of, exploring grief, or, Jason Statham and the girl have to, they haven't really bonded ever since then. They're a little distant or something like that. They've introduced an uncle character that's essentially just taking her place, the mom's place. So instead of Jason Statham and his love interest, it's Jason Statham and his love interest's brother. And they don't really talk about her death at all, really. There's one point where the uncle's or the daughter's telling her uncle, Grandpa and Ma talked about you an awful lot, and he's sick. It's not a factor on any of the character growth. And that's the thing about returning actors when they can't do it and trying to work that into the narrative. You kind of have to make something that works, and they did not, you know what I mean? Another similar example, when they had to write out Mila Kunis in Ted 2. I understand the situation, okay, we're losing the actress, what do? We have to, come up with a plot. Mark Wahlberg's coming back. She's an important part of the character. They broke up. But the point of the movie is that, they're kind of having a happy ending, so it's a complete undermine, and that's an example of, what not to do. And I hate to say that Meg 2 has the same problem of Ted 2, but yeah, that's exactly what kind of happened here. It's the same thing of man, you guys could have worked that into the narrative and had that be an effective character or story thing, but it's just nothing. What the story itself, it's fairly generic, and I know these are all based off of novels, so I'm not trying to diss on Steve Bolton or anything like that. I'm not sure how close this is to his original books. I've not read them, but a lot of the storytelling here is just very lackluster, and it's very confusing. Like, why would Jason Statham? I can understand him being like an eco warrior, you know, fighting these guys who are like dumping waste in the waters and stuff like that, but why would he be working with the organization? Even if his buddy Cliff Curtis is there, why would he be working for the organization that has like a captured Meg, a baby Meg? You know what I mean? Like, wouldn't he be like, Mother Nature's something you can't mess with, and I cannot condone this? But I guess he's fine because Cliff Curtis is there, his buddy from the last movie, and his daughter's uncle is there. So I don't know. It was weird to me that they chose that and they didn't really address it, because he still maintains at other points throughout the movie, like, this isn't something you need to mess with. But it's like, you're working with these people. What are you talking about? A lot of the other characters that they reintroduce or freshly introduce, because there's only a couple returning faces and then there's just a bunch of new people, I don't care about him, you know what I mean? I think, like I said earlier, you know, that advantage the first Meg had is that, all right, the movie knows that they're introducing you, so there's a little bit of time like, okay, this person is that, this person is that, and this movie, it's just like, you're dropped in a room with a bunch of them standing around, and they all seem to be doing, like, the same job, the same skills, the same mindset about things, and it's like, these aren't interesting characters. Where's Ruby Rose? Oh, wait, the dispute with Warner Bros. Because she got horribly mistreated on Batgirl. Oh, they did bring back Paige Kennedy as DJ, and look, he's funny. There's still some points where I laughed with DJ in this movie, and that was fun. I did like seeing his turn in this with that character. But when he's the only one, and everyone else, even the uncle that they introduced, like I said, it's very obviously just, all right, replace the mom with this character, but there's still nothing else for him to like to make him stand out other than he also participates in some action scenes. It's like, okay, but Jason Statham just got into a fist fight with somebody, you know what I mean? So it's like, we don't need too many of those guys. Even, you know, even another character has explained like, oh, I've taken some like fighting lessons off screen in between the events of the last movie, so I'm a fighter now too. So it's like, you can't have too many of those. That was the thing about the first Meg, is that Jason Statham was the main guy, and his love interest helped a little bit too. The other characters were like, we're the nerds, we're the people that don't get out there much, we're here to assist you, but not physically too much. The villains that they have here, because they have human villains now, it almost felt like I was watching like Jurassic World again, having some of these villains, because the thing about Rainn Wilson in the first Meg is that he's not really like villain. He is a corporate billionaire, you know, sleazebag, but he keeps it well hidden, and it's not like he has plans of like, I'm gonna dominate, you know, the country, I'm gonna dominate sales, I'm gonna sell this thing and become an even bigger billionaire, a trillionaire, you know what I mean? He's trying to cover his ass at a certain point, so he takes a slightly manipulative turn, but he's not really just an all-out villain, you know what I mean? This one has villains, and none of them really work, and none of them make sense to me, you know? And once again, it doesn't help that their introduction, it's like, I've already forgotten about you. I didn't think you'd be coming back, was kind of my thing when they revealed who a specific villain was. Because they also try to, like, hide them, too. But it's like, it's not really an interesting mystery. Like I said, when they, you know, showed one of them, I was like, oh, you're back? I thought you were like a throwaway character, and then they kind of present a mystery of like, oh, someone is a mole, someone is on the rig, sabotage stuff, and it's like, I know who it is, you know what I mean? It's like, I know exactly who it is, and there's just no suspense after that, and it's like, when I can figure it out, and it takes so long, it genuinely does affect the other characters who are like, I gotta solve this mystery, we gotta figure stuff out, because when it takes them so long to figure it out, it's like, that's frustrating, and it feels like a betrayal to the characters as well. Like, that was the thing about the first Meg, is that they're placed in a situation that is ridiculous, and they may be taking some specific liberties that you just have to go with, but they do present themselves as, like, jokey, but smart, you know, they know some shit, and in this one, it's just kind of like, they know some shit to a point where we have to keep things happening, but we can't think of a clever way to, like, hide that, you know what I mean? It did not really work for me, and there's this one guy who's, like, the grunt, you know, the physical threat to our characters, and they introduce, like, a backstory, like, you don't remember, obviously, Jason Statham, but we have a history, and they treat it just like that, like Jason Statham just figured out, and he's like, oh, we have a history? Oh, well, let's get into a fist fight then. And that's it, you know? There's nothing interesting to go over with that as well, to explore the Jonas character or anything like that. It's just, this guy has a history with him. Okay, now audience, you understand the stakes. And so please buy into this villain that is just very boring, you know? You know, and yeah, it does not help. I'm not trying to diss on the actors at all, let me just make that clear. But it does not help when the screenplay is just filled with just some bad dialogue and some bad jokes. I didn't laugh at, unless it was like DJ, I didn't really laugh at a lot of the jokes or even the one-liners. You know, I did start to laugh near the third act at action beats, not jokes. And that's the problem, is that they're trying to be a comedy and an action adventure sci-fi film, and only at a certain point does that aspect of it work, because even in the lead up to that, like I said, the last act, you know, tops the first Megs, but it's almost like identical structurally to that one. Even the beats on how they end the movie, it's kind of shocking what they do. The lead up to it, it takes a long time to get to that point, and there's a lot of time where, if you've seen in the trailers, they're in the trench, they're underwater. There's a lot of time in there, and when action gets kicking down there, when they're in the depths, it's hard to make out. It's very hard to see. I couldn't really tell if it was like a choppy editing thing, or just the nature of the scene is so dark and bleak, you can't see shit just in general. But either way, it doesn't really make for a fun or exciting action sequence. You know what I mean? I was reminded of In the Earth, when there was like the opposite. It was complete darkness and then flashing lights for like a solid like couple minutes, and I'm like, fuck, I gotta look away, Ben, what the fuck, you know? And then in this movie, there's not really any flashing lights, it's just so dark, and I'm like, fuck, Ben, I can't see shit! Like, what am I supposed to do? But they don't really play on, like, any horror aspects either, you know? They don't really lean into, like, yeah, it's really dark and really fucking scary, you know? It's not really a nail-biting, suspenseful sequence. And every time, and it doesn't help that every time they show a close-up of them in their little robot suits, that I can definitely fucking tell that they're in front of a green screen, and that they're, you know, that maybe the glass on their masks isn't even real. Maybe the suits themselves aren't real. I don't know. It just looks very digital, and very obviously they're not actually anywhere, you know? And you know, there's certain shots of visual effects that look good, like when they introduce some of those other creatures later, it looks very good. But there's just, there are so many other shots as well, and I'm gonna attribute it to time, because so much of like visual effects problems come down to time. You know, there's a lot of really talented artists out there that just don't have enough time to finish shit and make it look great. So I'm gonna attribute a lot of the choppiness to time, which is weird. Because you'd think they'd have all the time in the world in the 5 years it took them to make this, you know? Movie made $500 million, and they waited 5 years to do so. Obviously, there would have been a delay at some point if they really rushed into it. But still, you know, it's crazy. It's crazy to me. So yeah, guys, I walked into this movie hoping for something fun. I did start to see the Rotten Tomatoes score coming in. It was like, it started out at 0, that bumped up to like at least 20% last time I checked. But I was going in with like the expectation of like, I haven't read any of the reviews. I only know a lot of people are shitting on the movie. Could that be because it is still like they really stepped it up with how goofy they are, and maybe it is so bad it's good. You know, the first Meg didn't get great critical consensus either, but, you know, alas, that was not the case. You know, I think a lot of people just recognize it's just a really bland kind of movie. You know, there's spots of enjoyment, but so much of the movie, it takes itself too seriously. It's not very tongue-in-cheek. You know, Jason Statham, and I love Jason Statham, but, you know, when it comes to him and his action roles, you know, there's very few roles where he's trying something different, and you have to, a lot of his roles, it's kind of like grading on a curve, like, okay, well, how is he utilized with his same character kind of acting? You know, Operation Fortune is a movie that came out a couple months ago by Guy Ritchie, and it's a spy thing. It almost kind of feels like an extended like pilot for like a spy TV show. But, you know, it was a fine movie, you know, nothing amazing, but it was fine. You know, if they made another, I would see it because I like the characters in it, and Jason Statham is kind of utilized well in that. Like, okay, yeah, he's the gruff, You know, he's the gruff guy. He's going to beat people up, and they utilize him well enough, and there's some comedy for him to work off of too. And in this one, the comedy just feels so dry. So Jason Statham himself is left out to dry, you know? It's like, man, you know, you can do these, you know, fist fights, and you can pull off a lot of the, you know, athleticism that comes with this role, you know, doing all the stuff that he does, running and swimming, riding a jet ski, ducking from gunfire, and also Meg's coming at you. You know, there is some fun to be had with that, but, you know, as far as the actual performance, creating a character, embodying a character, and having it connect with the audience, Jonas as a character, I can't forget him, but he's a joke. But he's a joke. He's a joke who's not in on the joke. So it's like, man, I don't know, guys. It was just a big letdown because I wanted to have a big old goofy time. And eventually, a goofy time does come. It doesn't really make up for the rest of the movie when so much of the plot is kind of nonsensical, or you're disengaged with the characters, not interested. It's like, been there, done that. There's literally an aspect of this ending that feels like it came out of Jurassic World. And I think you'll know when you get to it, you know? It's nothing big or anything like that, but there's just an aspect of how that first movie ended where I'm kind of like, yeah, that feels like exactly a beat from Jurassic World. And I know Steve Alton said, you know, this movie franchise could be as big as Jurassic Park, but man, you haven't even made one good movie. And the Jurassic Park franchise always has the first one, which is not good, it's excellent. It's amazing. The first Meg was not that, but it does look amazing in comparison to this one, you know? I don't think it's even necessarily a thing of like, well, John Turteltaub, he, you know, clearly, you know, understood what this was supposed to be. He had a better, you know, idea of this. I don't know, you know, I think some of this can come down to the screenplay as well. I don't think no disrespect to Ben Wheatley, but I definitely think this is like a paycheck movie because there's nothing about this that really stood out to me other than like some like cinematography or visual things. There's nothing really that stands out as far as like, yeah, this is a Ben Wheatley movie. You know, it's not J.A. Bayona going on with Fallen Kingdom or Rian Johnson doing The Last Jedi, where it's like, oh yeah, it's a franchise movie, but it's a Rian Johnson movie. It's a J.A. Bayona movie. You know, this is a paycheck movie. So there's not really a signature touch at the helm. So I genuinely do think it's something with the screenplay. Something went wrong with the development here. There was a miscommunication as far as like, why did people enjoy that first movie so much? Why did people go to that first movie? And it seemed like they doubled down on like the worst aspects of it. Even them exploring the trench, even putting them down there. Okay, say that the Megs aren't in it as much. Them fighting the big sharks isn't in it as much. Okay, but what else can you explore in the trench? And even the way they do that, well, like I said, when it gets to like a big action sequence, it's hard to see. But even like the exploration part of that before, it's just kind of like, a lot of this is just kind of washing over me, you know? There's some impressive work with the visual effects artists, but a lot of this isn't really clicking for me either. I'm gonna give Meg 2 The Trench a C-. There's aspects to enjoy. I didn't think this was like a horrible production, but man, there's just some obvious fumblings that I couldn't believe they made again, or made after recognizing where they could have went wrong with the first movie. You know, with the critical consensus not being great, they think, all right, let's try to improve. Let's try to do something else here. You know, let's try to fix things. And they only made things worse. They doubled down on the stuff they already did, but introduced newer aspects that also don't work. You know, they have Jurassic World level villains, a Jurassic World, you know, a section near the end where it's like, that literally reminds me exactly of that. You know, stop trying to be Jurassic World, damn it. Anyways, guys, have you seen Meg 2 The Trench yet? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Sorry, it's been since October of last year since my face has been on camera. I cannot promise a schedule. I can't promise that it won't take another, like, 8 months to get another video out. But I'm glad to be doing this. I had to talk about Meg 2. For some reason, I couldn't talk about Guardians of the Galaxy 3, or Beau is Afraid, or Indiana Jones, or Mission Impossible, or Barbenheimer, but I can certainly talk about Meg 2. That's where my priorities are at. Anyways, guys, leave your thoughts on this movie in the comments down below, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.